Let's take a look at our top story on household incomes. They fell for the first time in more than a decade last year, with COVID-19 battering Singapore's economy. After adjusting for inflation, the drop was 2.4%. All income groups also saw declines, but the lowest income was hit the hardest, with an over 6% drop. For more insights, we're joined by Associate Professor Walter Theseira from the Singapore University of Social Sciences. Prof, well, the drop in median monthly household income per household member does not seem like a lot, but the last time we saw this decline was more than a decade ago. So can you give us a sense of how exactly this impacts the average household?
Well, first, I think it's important to point out there is no such thing as the average household where COVID-19 is concerned. COVID-19 has had a very uneven impact on Singaporeans, and this follows the same pattern we're seeing globally. If you're a high-income, high-skilled worker, you've generally been able to transition to working from home. But if you're a low or middle income worker, especially in services, you will have been very hard hit because you couldn't keep working during the circuit breaker or during our phase reopening that much. So what's actually driving this drop in median household income is those households where somebody's lost a job, been out of work for a few months, had to take up a lower paying temporary job. They have experienced a much larger drop than this median fall. But you also have many households for whom COVID-19 has had very little impact beyond maybe a smaller bonus or increment this year. And in fact, landed property residents actually saw their incomes go up slightly last year. So we've actually got a tale of two economies where COVID-19 is concerned. High-tech, high-skill economy, which has bounced back strongly, but a lower-wage service economy, which has been hard hit. And it's not a problem unique to Singapore.
Well, at the same time, household income rose over the last 5 years. How significant would you say this is? And beyond government aid, is that growth sufficient to outweigh the negative effects brought about by the pandemic?
Over a longer period, yes, you're right. We've been fortunate to enjoy real income growth at all levels. On net, Singaporeans are still better off today, even after COVID-19, than 5 years ago. But what you'll see is that the rate of real income growth has been slowing in Singapore. The annualized real rate of growth per household member, that was 3.6% during the first half of the 2010s, and that's fallen to 2.8% over the last 5 years. And this slower rate of income growth is something we will have to learn to live with because the economy is already caught up to the most developed economies, and it's going to be harder now to achieve a rapid rate of income growth in Singapore.
Now, when I talk about the Genie coefficient now, the 2020 drop was higher compared to previous years, and that's really attributed to the amount of government aid, that was provided during this crisis. What does this tell us now about the income divide at this point? How concerned should we be?
Well, there are two figures to look at. The Genie coefficient before taxes and transfers, that tells us about the income distribution in Singapore, and the Genie after taxes and transfers, that tells us how government policy has reshaped inequality. There's actually been no change in the pre-tax Genie coefficient. That's actually a relief because globally, COVID-19 has probably resulted in an increase in inequality. What is remarkable, I think, is that our COVID-19 support measures have actually pushed down the post-tax Gini coefficient to one of the lowest levels in years. And I think that's because a lot of the income support last year was targeted at lower and middle income workers, and a lot of households got thousands of dollars of cash in additional support.
Yeah, and also, Prof, I just want to ask you, how much are we expecting to change in the months ahead? The government has already pumped in quite a significant amount of aid into creating more jobs and traineeships.
Well, many of these investments, I think, have already had success. They have held down unemployment. We know resident unemployment levels have actually recovered to the pre-COVID-19 level by the end of 2020. But what we have to watch out for is the quality of jobs that people have. In the middle of the pandemic, it's better to have any job or traineeship than nothing, but not all of these jobs are going to be matched to a worker's skills or offer a good longer-term career path. So I think as COVID-19 is dealt with globally, the economy will recover. That will bring about opportunities for our workers to move out of these temporary jobs. So I think the key to recovering from the pandemic at the worker level, they've got to take opportunities to upgrade themselves, and that may mean finding new jobs with better career prospects. And I hope government support will help them do that.
Well, thank you so much, Associate Professor Walter Theseira there from the SUSS.